All right, welcome everybody. Let's do something a little bit different. This is Sunday afternoon. We are here in the year 2024. I think it's September, first week of September. Let's get this specific date, September 8th, 2024. And I wanted to do a video. I talked about this a little bit before, but I want to do this video about the United States of America over the next 10 years. What is my opinion? Where do I think we're headed? And I'm not really talking politically, even though that may have bearing on the status of America. But what I'm really talking about is economically, the economics of America over the next 10 years, and just the overall strength or lack of. So let's get started. The first thing I want to say is I believe there's a really good chance that the United States of America will have a massive economic collapse within the next 10 years. So we're in 2024, somewhere between now and 2034. So, first of all, define economic collapse. Well, I think the US dollar, which right now is trading at about 100, will probably go below 70 pretty easily. And I think it might even get down to 50. And if it gets real bad, you could see like a massive loss all the way down, like 95% loss. It's basically really, really bad. But yeah, I think there's a decent chance the US dollar will lose at least half its value, down to 50 in the next 10 years. And this what I'm about to talk about first here. This is really, really important that you get this. Now, Americans, the new generation, the newest, youngest people may be a little different, but the middle-aged and older crowd, they put a lot of value in the dollar, the greenback, the paper dollar, okay? Whether that's $1, $5, $10, $20, all the different denominations, doesn't really matter. The point is, a lot of Americans view that as that's the true value, right? As long as you have money in your pocket, so to speak. When you go to the bank and make a withdrawal, it would be in cash, right? They give you cash. Now, it's really important you understand this next thing. The dollar that's in your wallet or underneath your mattress, it isn't worth anything. You've got to understand that. And I really mean that, and later in the video I'll talk about why. But it's just paper. The only thing holding that up is faith. The American people believe, and the world for the most part believes, the US dollar has value. But the reality, guys and gals, it has no value. That's long since been eroded. The dollar has no value. Now, you just heard me say it's going to go from 100 down to 50, but that's just like this theoretical value that's been assigned to it. The reality is it's worthless. And I firmly believe that. That greenback is worthless. So why am I mentioning that? Because a lot of people believe, well, if what hits the fan, I'll just withdraw all the money out of the bank and I'll have a bunch of cash, I'll be good to go. No, you won't. That currency, the green ink on that paper ain't worth a damn thing. Just remember that. You could literally go to the store sometime over the next 10 years and all the paper in the world won't buy a loaf of bread. That paper I'm talking about is the U.S. currency, the U.S. dollar. You could have 100 of those that won't buy a loaf of bread. 500. And they look at you sideways. Sorry, we're not taking U.S. cash. Because we know it isn't worth anything. And don't think it can't happen, because, oh, yes, it can. So this video isn't about scare tactics and fear-mongering and all that. I'm just telling you there's a real good chance of an economic collapse, and the U.S. dollar could be literally worthless. Okay, so you got to get that in your head that, yes, we use it still to buy stuff and barter with and exchange and tender cash, so to speak. But that may not always be the case. So what's truly valuable? Well, you see a picture in front of you. This is just a random picture I picked off the internet. You see a house here and you have a creek in front of it, water running by. If you have a home right now and you have a mortgage, you want to pay that sucker off. You want to hold the deed in your hand as quickly as possible. I'm being dead serious. Why? Because when the poop hits the fan, you at least have a roof over your head. And you won't owe the banks. And they can't confiscate your home. Now, there could still be some shenanigans, with marauders and pillagers and all this stuff. That's a different subject matter, okay? Be prepared to defend your land and your home. It's like in the old times. But legally, you want to hold that deed. Okay? Because even if you don't have work and you don't have any money or income coming in, you have a roof over your head. And that's really, really important to get that. Yeah, it could get that bad. So pay off your home. You want to know what's valuable? Your home. Especially with no remaining balance on your mortgage. Got the deed in hand. Okay? Probably the most valuable thing you could possibly own. Way more valuable than any cash ever. So you want to use cash? Fine, use it to pay off your home. Because it's worthless. Right now, cash is still valuable, but it won't always be that way. The second thing, do I believe is one of the most, second most valuable things? Water. Like you see here, water. Not everybody who owns a house that has land has water on it, but if it does, no matter what you do, don't sell that land. If you got paid off your mortgage and it has water running on it, that's like that. Let me tell you something right now. That's worth more than all the gold in the world. You own the home, you got the deed, and you have a creek running through your land. That's worth more than all the gold and diamonds. It's priceless. You can't put a value on it. Because while the rest of the world is struggling, you have both a roof over your head that's been paid for, and you can take a bucket out there and grab water. Yeah, I'm being serious. And don't laugh. It can happen. So owning your home with the deed in your hand and having water running through your land, super important. Okay, some people have wells. That's fine too. Now, what are other things that are extremely valuable? Well, your family, your true friends, and I say true friends, that's important. Not everybody's a true friend. And among the Christians, fellow saints that pray, you pray for each other, help each other. Okay, very, very valuable. What's the most valuable thing ever? God himself. Yeah, I know for you non-Christians, you probably think that's nuts, or you can't like wrap your mind around that or your heart around it. But I'm going to throw it out there anyway. You'd be surprised how many people come to God during times of great distress. They cry out to God. Even atheists, rejecting God, but when the poop hits the fan, suddenly they become believers real fast. Oh yeah. There's an old saying, there's no atheist in a foxhole. It's just a saying, but it probably is a pretty strong argument. Think about it. Okay, gold. Is gold valuable during times of Great Depression? And is this big old gold bar we're looking at here just a blow-up picture of 1,000 grams? Fine gold. Is it worth something? Yeah, it probably will hold at least a decent amount of value, and you may be able to barter with it. Probably. Okay? So it's okay to have some gold for a hedge. But remember this, folks, guys and gals, you cannot eat gold. Remember that. You can't eat it. Now the question is, can you use it to barter to get food? Maybe. But in really, really stressful times, they may just look at you like, keep your gold. We're not giving up our hogs. We're not giving up our few goats or chickens. We're not giving up our crop, our garden. Seriously. They could get that bad. But yeah, I think some gold is probably okay. Just don't become too over-dependent on it. Okay? All right, so that's that's like the first part of this video where I'm just addressing what is valuable. It sure the heck ain't the US dollar. That's a pile of turd. It ain't worth the paper it's printed on. Trust me when I tell you that. But in my opinion now, what I believe is valuable. Okay? Okay, now let's switch over and talk about why do I think all this. Let's look at, some of you have seen this before, and I've had this on this website before, the US debt clock. Now, what you're going to find interesting here is, let me switch over to a different color, is I have this, what's cool about this website is you can go back through time, debt clock, time machine. So this is 1980 that we're seeing here. This was the debt. in 1980. Okay, and what was it? It was $990 billion. That's a pretty high number. Billions. Anytime you start talking billions, that's a big number. So we're at in 1980, sorry, in September of 1980, the U.S. had a national debt of $990 billion. Boy, that's pretty high. Here is a U.S. domestic product. This is how much U.S. citizens and businesses and everything can produce per year. Okay, 2.7 trillion. So our gross debt, this number, right, goes into that number right there, this gross domestic product, right, goes to about a third, or 35%. That's what that number is. So our ability to produce was much greater than our debt. Okay, great, no problem. That's, we had about a 65%, I guess I don't want to call it surplus, but 65% domestic product or production surplus or above and beyond the national debt. Okay. So America was not exactly in great shape at nearly $1 trillion in debt, but it was doing okay. And, this isn't too bad. It's manageable, right? Okay. A lot of other numbers here, but we're not going to get into all that right now. We're just going to look at gross debt to GDP ratio. Okay, let's do the time machine. We're going to move forward to 1990. Lo and behold, wow, it jumped from $990 billion to $3.4 trillion just in 10 years. We're now in the trillions. And look at this, it nearly doubled, not quite, but almost doubled the GDP ratio. Well, this is getting sketchy, right? Now we have a problem. In 1990, we already had a big problem, 60% gross debt to GDP ratio. That's a big problem. We had a chance right there to do something about it. Okay, only 35% revenue to GDP ratio. So pretty bad. That's pretty bad. That's a number that should have scared everybody. All right, could we have recovered that point? Yeah, we could have. We still could have recovered at 3.4 trillion. It was still manageable, and we could have turned it around. Now, I can just hear some of you saying, well, who's to blame? Who's to blame? Who to blame? A lot of people to blame. A lot of people are to blame to allow this nonsense. Okay? Yes, politicians. Yes, corporations. The list goes on and on and on of people with really bad intentions and bad motives. But let me tell you what the real culprit is for, as we move forward into the time machine here. What's the real culprit? Human greed and sin. Oh, that's right. You heard it. Don't run away from it. Don't think I'm some kind of religious nut. Human greed, period, and sin. That's what produces this ridiculous nonsense. Yes, world population is increasing. There's other factors involved, but basically human greed. Okay, let's move on in the time machine here. We're going to come up to the year 2000. $5.5 trillion. Yeah. Believe it or not, the gross national debt came down. Debt to GDP ratio. The U.S. production, domestic production, actually went up. It increased. I think this is probably a little bit of somebody. To be honest with you, I think this may be a little bit BS. There was some shenanigans going on here, but it's possible. It's possible it is accurate. So that's why the GDP or gross debt to GDP ratio actually came down from 60-something% down to 52% here, because our production rate went up from 7 trillion to 10, almost 11, well, 10.5 trillion. Even though our debt went up, our production went up with it. So this production, the amount of U.S. citizens and residents producing product, masks the debt issue. But this is a huge problem already at $5.5 trillion. Okay? All right. Let's move forward. The year 2004. Now we're dealing with Iraqi wars here at this point. Now we're dealing with Iraqi war. Look at this. $8 trillion. And we're back up to 65% gross debt to GDP ratio. Right back up. Bing. Into a U.S. production of 12 trillion is not enough to overcome this massive debt that's just running out of control. 65% gross debt to GDP ratio. We can't produce enough production, if you will, or create enough production. In other words, the manufacturers, the businesses, the people of the United States of America can't produce enough to overcome the debt, and the debt's catching up to us. That's what's happening here. Okay? And who's to blame? You got it. Greed and sin, which greed is a sin. That's the core of it right there. All right, let's move forward. 2008. Of course, we had the big financial crisis in 2007 and in 2009. $4 more trillion been added to the national debt. The gross domestic product did go up from 12 trillion to 14 trillion, but not enough. 83.7% gross debt to GDP ratio. Or look at this measly little revenue to GDP ratio, below 30%. Do I think at 12 trillion we still had a chance to recover and put a stop to the big problem? Yeah. I think at this point we still could have. It would have been really hard. Why do I say that? Look at the debt per taxpayer, $110,000 per taxpayer. Citizens, including babies and old people that don't work, $39,000. But for the working people, in other words, taxpayers, $110,000? I don't know about you, but not everybody I talk to makes $110,000 a year. So this would have been kind of like the last ditch effort, 2008. Maybe we could have taken drastic measures to try to curb this, insatiable appetite of debt and sin and greed and, out of control spending. And yes, the rhinos, Republicans and Democrats are all to blame. Multiple presidents are to blame. Wars are to blame. Evil people who murder other people and start wars. And you can go on and on and on. Manufacturers shipping jobs over to China. You can just go on and on, right? The list of evil that help perpetuate all this. Yeah, I said it. Republicans aren't free and clear. A lot of people who put an R next to their name today in Congress and the Senate, they're just Democrats. They're just Democrats, guys. They may have an R next to their name, but trust me, they're not Republicans. They're not like truly conservative people. They're like barely conservative. You'll hand them $1 million and they'll do whatever they want. They'll do whatever you tell them to do. They don't really believe in freedom. They believe in their selfish retirement funds. So I think 2008 was really kind of the last ditch effort to maybe stop this. And from that point on, it was a done deal. And I talked about it back then. All right, let's move on to 2012. Now you can see we're at nearly $17 trillion. We've now officially gone over 100% gross debt to GDP ratio. And at that point, forget it. It was toast. Like I said, 2008 was really the last chance. America cannot produce more than the debt that's been created. And it never will again. You heard it, and I said it. America will never, ever, in the future of the United States of America, will it ever be able to outproduce its debt. It's never going to happen. Just think about that for a moment. Ain't going to happen. We will never catch up to the debt. Now you know why I say the United States is going to have a collapse, and it will collapse. The chances are very high the United States will have a massive economic collapse. Now, we still have a lot of natural resources, amber waves of grain, crude oil, blah, blah, blah. It's still there, but it's not enough. It won't be enough to stop this collapse. Okay, let's move on. 2016. Now we're at nearly $21 trillion in debt in 2016. The gross debt to GDP ratio is 108, so it's gone up just a little bit here because gross production, did increase to 19 trillion, so it slowed down this percentage from. It kind of masks this debt, right? It just kind of masks it. It doesn't really solve the problem. It just masks it. And again, just as a reminder, why do I say that we'll never recover? Look at this. Debt per taxpayer, almost $180,000. You know anybody going around with $180,000, folks? How many people right now are free and clear of $180,000 sitting just free? I'll pay my part to pay down the national debt. Yeah, right. Right. Okay, let's move on to 2020, just 4 years ago. almost $29,000. I'm sorry, 29,000. 29, yeah, I said thousand before. Sorry, I meant to say trillion. Nearly $29 trillion. And now the gross debt to GDP ratio is really out of control. 123%. It's just ballooned. It's crazy. It's toast. We're all the way down here at below 25% revenue to GDP ratio. United States is done, folks. It is done. Just trust me when I tell you, the United States is done as a nation. It's done. It will never recover economically. We are on the backside of a nation that's going to collapse. This is the history of empires, right? If you look throughout the history, this is the history. This is how it works. You get a nation that gets full of itself. It kind of tells God, thanks, we got it from here. God blesses a nation, and then the nation gets greedy and says, oh, thank you, God, for blessing us. And then you get a few new generations, and all the perversions start to show up, just like it did in the Roman Empire. You could go on other empires, too. You can go back. Very, very similar track. If you go back, many empires have collapsed for some of the same reasons. Not all of them collapsed for the same reasons, but a lot of them collapsed for the similar reasons. Of course, you're going to hear the analogy between the United States of America and the Roman Empire because it's very, very similar. A lot of perversions started to creep into society, homosexuality, and you could be any gender you want nowadays, and all the crap that nobody wants to talk about and pretend, oh, you're a racist if you talk about that. You're just so bad. Give me a break. No-fault divorce, abortion. I could go on and on and on about a society that turns its back on what is right and what is good. And I'm sure there's plenty of woke people who are probably going to watch this video and shake their head. You're a horrible person. I don't really give a rat's ass. Call me whatever you want. I'll call it like I see it. And this nation has completely rejected everything that's even just rationally sane. And this right here proves it. So can each tax-paying American come up with $265,000? Yeah, right. Ain't never going to happen. That's why I use the word ain't. Ain't never going to happen, folks. Well, Americans just don't understand right now, especially with all this income of illegal immigrants that are pouring in by the millions over the last 4 years. Americans' banana republic. It just hasn't really hit home yet. It's a banana republic. It hasn't hit home. And I believe there's going to be skirmishes, probably. There's a pretty decent chance in the next 10 years, there's going to be skirmishes. I'm talking about gunfights. Yes. I don't just mean gangs in Chicago and here and there. No, I mean, there's going to be skirmishes. I don't know if it's going to blow up into a civil war, but Americans are armed and there's probably going to be skirmishes. There will be probably bloodshed on American soil. To what degree and how big, that I can't really say, but something's going to break. Something will give, and I don't think it's going to break it to the good side, if you know what I mean. There's going to have to, probably more than likely, there's going to be some really bad trend first before, the whole thing just kind of settles down. And when the dust settles, America probably won't be America anymore. Not in the sense, the way we view it today. It just, if you think about the British Empire, how it collapsed. Remember how it used to be so extensive across the globe, and now it's just this UK barely trying to hold on? Well, that's kind of where America's probably headed. It's something like that. Okay, so that's that, 123%. Let's move forward to right now, today, 2024. Here we are, September 2024. We're at $35 trillion in debt. I can't really see this number right now. I got to convert up with this little 6 o'clock thing, but I'm not going to really worry about it. Let's move forward to the 2028 forecast. There it is, almost $47 trillion in debt. 147% U.S. federal debt to GDP ratio. Debt per taxpayer, $332,000. So, all right, there you go. I'm gonna wrap up the video right there. I wanted to share this. Yes, I believe the United States can have a massive collapse, probably in the next 10 years. If Trump gets into the White House, things could slow down a little bit. It might be okay for a little while, But I don't even think he can really stop it. I think it's going to happen if Camel Toe gets in there and the Marxists take over. It's going to happen probably at an accelerated rate. Get ready, folks. I would go back, watch this video. I'm being dead serious. You want to own your home. You want good water supply. I'm not saying you need to just like totally isolate yourself from society, but I would put some things in place. Don't trust the US dollar. I think it's going to collapse. It ain't going to be worth the paper it's printed on. It already isn't worth it, but it's going to, the realization of that's going to happen. Okay. All right. That's it. Want to just share that with everybody. And we'll talk to you all real soon again next time.